Again, I want to just thank everybody for just in the short time that we've been here, we've been filled with love and a lot of kind words and dances. So dances on us, so that was nice. So I say that to say I'm very grateful for this church. Not knowing you and you not knowing me, y'all are being Christ's love. And I pray and I hope that you do that in your community with strangers, people you don't know, and I'm sure you do. But love, God's love, it should just beam from us. I mean, it should, Paul talks about we should be the aroma of Christ. That means when you walk in a room, people should smell Jesus. I mean, they should literally see something different. Who are you? What do you know that I don't? I mean, that's what we're trying to be in. And since I've walked in here, I've smelled the aroma of Christ. Y'all are doing great. So thank you for that, the warm welcomes and all that. So session 2, we're talking about creating a Google culture in our churches. Now, no, we're not going to bring in all the computers, and it's all about tech, and we have to catch up with the kids in our tech. That is important, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the way Google interacts with its employees. Recently, I've done some study on this, read a couple of books, mainly one by Laszlo Bock. He's Google's Senior Vice President of People Operations. Basically, his job is to keep the people working there happy. And he does a fabulous job. And in fact, Google has Fortune magazine, and multiple people have written about Google culture and the culture they create and how they're getting literally hundreds of thousands of applications every year because of the culture that they have created. So I think there's something to learn there. Now, obviously, we're not talking about taking care of employees here. We're talking about taking care of our young people. So we talked about attracting people, young people, with Disney magic. Now we have to develop them. Why would people want to stay here is the question. They've already come in, you've already got them, you've already attracted them, they've seen something different in you, they know you're authentic, they know you're filled with love, they're curious, they come, but what keeps them here? Well, we hope eventually God will grip them. The story of Jesus will grip them. But what are we doing to help that? And that's what we're going to be talking about in the second session. So, developing young people, I want to start off with asking a question. And this is an open question, so I do want some answers. And I teach a lot, so I can sit in silence for a very long time. I'm also an introvert, so I can sit in silence for a very long time. So, just give you a heads up. My question is, what is culture? What's culture to you? Just shout it out.
The way we do things.
The way we do things. Good. That's a good one.
How we interact.
How we interact. Yeah, how we interact with each other.
We live by.
Did you have both?
The ideas and practices we live by.
The ideas and practices we live by, absolutely. What else? What else is culture? When I say culture, what do you think of?
Experience.
An experience. Yeah, what do they experience?
I'm in a shell.
Usually connected with community. It's a
Connected.
culture, it's not a single person.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's 100% right. Yeah, it's about what the body believes, not just what the one person believes. Right here.
It's our beliefs and our ideals.
Yeah. Yeah, what we believe, what drives us, what are we passionate about?
Perception's reality.
What was that?
Perception's reality.
Perception as in yes, what you said. Sorry, I was distracted. My Google or my Siri came up, and I think I said something that sparked her. You heard me, guys. You already talking about Google. She's like, wait a second.
Culture's also what we won't do. There's going to be a wall that ultimately we'll put up.
Yes.
Or a face, or a mask, or whatever.
Yes, absolutely. It's not just what we are and who we are, it's who we are not, and what we won't do. And sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. Sometimes we can create good cultures, sometimes we can create bad cultures.
Some words say no.
Right? Sometimes it's a mix of both. And this isn't about being perfect, it's not about finding the perfect culture. It's just asking yourself, what type of culture have you created? That's what we have to establish. And I'm not going to give you a definition of culture. I want you to live within all the answers that were just said, because that's your culture here at Vero. That's the perception.
Yeah, I
know the exact definition of culture, but to me, I think it's a lot of different people who do things different ways, and it affects how they look on and how they perceive each other.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's diversity in culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's multiple people coming from different parts of the world with different stories trying to come together in one area.
I mean, the people from the south are different than the people from the north.
Yeah, I heard about the snowbirds, or what y'all call them. There's a culture there. Laszlo Bach, he says that people want to do something that means something. That drives people. People want to do something that means something. Can you ever think of an incident that you wanted to do something that meant nothing? Not when you didn't want to do nothing, but when you wanted to do something that meant nothing. When you do nothing, you're usually doing that for a reason. I want to relax. I want to get away. When's the last time you did something that meant nothing? The reality is that what drives us. We all want to do something that means something. It has some kind of weight behind it. We want to have some kind of meaning, some kind of significance to our life and our workings in it. And so, whenever we're creating culture, are we creating a space where people can do something that means something? And that's how I want to start this off. So, we're talking all about culture. So again, this is going to be a three-part. I'll say three things, three ways. I'm a preacher. We work in threes. I don't know why, but we do. So the first one is we have to create a culture of trust. That is going to be skewed a little bit. I'm going to change up the purpose of this, but we'll start with trust. I want to establish the idea of trust. You see, Google, it shows its employees trust through incentives. Google showers its employees. I mean, in fact, I'll just read them to you. They invest in their employees. So let me give you a couple, just a short list. This is a short list. Again, just like Disney, they have an extensive list. But this is an idea of employee benefits for working at Google. Tracy, take notes here. This is, you're going to want to hear this. Yeah.
The spelling camp.
So, reimbursement of up to $5,000 to employees for legal expenses. Maternity benefits of a maximum of 18 weeks off at about 100% pay. The father and the mother of the newborn are given expenses of a maximum of $500 for takeout meals for the initial 3 months they spend at home with the baby. There's financial support for adopting a child. There's an on-site car wash, oil change, bike repair, dry cleaning, gym, massage therapy, and hairstylist, all available. At the Googleplex, there's an on-site doctor, a free fitness center, and a trainer, and facility to wash clothes, among other benefits. Lunch and dinner are provided and free of charge, in addition to an assortment of delicious but healthy meals that are available every day, prepared by a gourmet chef. And that's just a short list. Now you wonder why people want to work there. I'm thinking, I can learn computer, whatever you do. Again, did you take those down? Next owners meeting, you can name off a couple.
We just don't do oil change.
Don't do oil change. So my question is, what does the church have to offer? Right? Obviously, most churches can't even touch this list. Okay? And we're not talking about hiring employees here. We're talking about getting people and keeping them in our churches, developing them. How can we give them some kind of incentive? Why do people want to stay here? That's what we're trying to create. When it comes to young people, it's going to shock you, even though everybody just went, whoa. It's not the what, it's the why. It's never the what. It's never what you're giving. Though it's nice to have all these benefits, it's the why behind your giving them. Millennials, they care more about intentions. See, Google invests in its employees because they care about them. They, to Google, are worth the investment. They are worth the effort. They are worth the expense. What are we doing in our churches to make people worth it? What are our intentions? Again, it's not about the what. It's not about giving, you're a guest here, you get a new car. Congratulations. Which is actually a thing. There are churches that on Easter Sunday, they give out free cars. Not my thing. I'd love to visit, sure. I could be a guest on Easter one Sunday. But they did studies on this. Barna study did a study on this church, and they asked, is this effective young people? Is this what young people want? 80% of the millennials that did that interview said they're not interested in that kind of thing. It's not the what. It's not what you're giving out. It's why you're giving things out.
Amen.
They care about the intention behind it. Google, again, they have the resources, and they said our employees are worth it. There's an element of trust that Google shows in its employees that's attractive to millennials. Millennials, they're constantly labeled as other. And we do it. We have a sign outside that has millennials with quotes around it. They're constantly labeled as other. Millennials, they merely want to be trusted, they want to be invested in, they want to be used. That's what millennials are seeking. They're not seeking new cars, they're not seeking, I don't know what churches give out, but they're not seeking it. They're seeking the intention behind it. Again, I said authenticity will be a thread to this entire talk. They're seeking that authenticity. You know, Jesus saw the worst, and I'm gonna do a sidetrack. I'm gonna chase this bunny that's over here real quick, and then we'll get back. You see, Jesus saw the best and the worst of people. He always did. I mean, you could just look at who Jesus ate meals with. You see this. See, eating meal in Jesus' time is a lot different than eating meals today. When someone wants to eat a meal with a minister, they either want to complain or they want something. So that we kind of get that back. But whenever I think of meals, I think, oh, I got to sit down with a person and eat with them and talk and hear a conversation. And you might do the same. Who's going to pay? Am I going to pay? Jesus' time, it's not that way. When you have a meal with somebody, it was a great honor. It was a level of status. Eating a meal with somebody was a public affair. It was like if you were to go on your social media account, your Facebook, your whatever, and you were to say, I recognize this person. I identify with this person. And you do it publicly. Eating a meal had great significance. Now look who Jesus ate meals with. He ate them with tax collectors. He ate them with sinners. He also ate them with religious leaders. Both sides of the camp, both enemies of each other, and he ate with both. Jesus said, I'm here for you. You are worth it. Now, this is all going to connect because things happen when people come in contact with Jesus. It just does. When people meet Jesus, things happen. I want you to think of John chapter 8. The woman with the bleeding I mentioned earlier had it for pretty much her entire life at this point. Bleeding excessively, and spent all of her money to get this fixed, and none of the doctors could figure it out. She was an outcast. Not only was she a woman, which is an outcast, I'm sorry women, that's just the way of the world then. Not only was she an outcast because she was a woman, but she was a bleeding woman. Excessively bleeding woman, and blood was unclean. Blood outside the body, unclean, don't touch. She wasn't allowed in the crowd. She was probably cast out, had to live outside the city. But she heard that Jesus was coming into town. She had heard stories about Jesus. She had heard about the power that this man had, the grace that he had, the mercy, the love this man Jesus had. If only she could just touch him. Only she could just reach out in faith, knowing that she very well could be slapped and spit on and stoned for just touching this man. Not just by the crowd, but potentially by him. She didn't know who Jesus was. She just heard stories. But she risked it. All it took was a touch from Jesus, and her life was changed. How are we bringing people in contact? I'm tripping all over this board. How are we bringing people in contact with Jesus? Bring people to Jesus. You know, the church. Oh, let me say this first, and let me ask it again. What does the church have to offer? You know, we talked about the what versus the why, and I asked, what does the church have to offer?
Blind see, the
Yeah,
lame are healed.
the power of Jesus. That's what we have to offer. We have the greatest thing to offer people. So the church has to be willing to tear down the obstacles and barriers. Jesus, we talked about earlier, being the barrier. You have to come to me if you want to get to him.
Right.
We have to get out of the way.
Yes.
We have to say, here he is. Go to him, not me. Don't come to my program. Don't come to me. Go to Jesus. Point people to Jesus. I mentioned earlier, we have a large influx of homeless and mental illness in our town. One of our members, a wealthy individual, he built a village for these people. It's right down the road from our church. It's cottages that look extremely nice. They look like little ideal homes. And they're just one bedroom and then one room. That's it. Actually, the room is in the bedroom, and then there's a bathroom that's private. Some of them are two, and they're in this little village. They're here, and they're transition homes. So what happens is, mainly for battered women, they can come getting away from an abusive relationship. It's all free, and organizations like our church, we adopt and sponsor a house. That means is that we stock the house full of furniture, and after 2 years of living for free, the person can take any of the furniture they want with them whenever they transition out. And a large part of that's for battered women. It's also for homeless and people who are not well off, and so on and so forth. So we have this village, and every once in a while, people from the community, we like to have meals there. We like to go and just be with them, to give them a meal, but also sit down. Now, primarily how this happens is people are in the kitchen, they serve, and they go and they sit down, and the people feel good because they've served. I told our congregation, if we're going to go, the only way that we're going to go is if we learn to be Jesus with them. Nowhere in the Bible do I read that Jesus worked in the kitchen and put food on a platter and said, here you go. Everywhere that I read, Jesus is eating with people. Jesus is sitting down and having a meal with people. And I said, if we're going to be Jesus to these people, we got to eat with them. We're not going to go feed them. We're going to go to eat with them. We're going to go talk to them. We're going to go learn their names, learn their stories, listen. And our church showed up. We had more people from our church there than from the community, and it's a large village. We had probably 250 of our members show up, cooked a meal, served it, but then made their own plate, went down and sat down. One person from the community had like 3 of our church members was talking to them, and they were the highlight of the night. And I remember cleaning up. Everybody had gone home. Some of the homeless people were still there. They were going to go inside the building after we were done cleaning so they could sleep on the floor. It was a little bit warmer in there. And one of the ladies came up to me. She said, I just want to thank you because your group is different. We're always grateful for people who come out here, people who give us a meal. Your group is different because they sat down and they ate with us. And it felt like a family reunion. It felt like we were sitting down eating a meal with people, and a lot of us haven't had that in a long time. Hallelujah.
Amen.
All it took was being Jesus. Point people to Jesus, not to you, not to your program. Point people to Jesus, and people are changed. And this is what young people are seeking. Our job is not to grow people. Our job is to plant the water. We don't do the increase. We don't take the plant, pull it out of the ground, and say, "There you go, I planted." That's not the right word. I'm from Oklahoma, and we have crops in it. They don't say that planted, I promise. And all this goes back to trust. We have to be willing to invest in the passions and the desires of young people that help them connect to Jesus. That's a key word. It's not that helped you connect to Jesus. It's not that continue to help you connect to Jesus. What helps them connect to Jesus? How can they get in contact with Jesus? Remove ourselves. Well, this is how we've always done it. Well, this is how I did it. Well, this is how that church is doing it. How can you do it? What will get you closer to Jesus? See how that changes the conversation, changes the intent. And the reality is that it's most likely not going to look the way that you connect to Jesus. And that's okay. That's something we're going to talk about right now. Is Jesus interacted with people differently. So, create a culture of trust or intentionality. We also have to create a culture of empowerment. So, going back to Google. Google gives freedom to its employees and encourages them to be creative and to be involved. How many of you I don't know how likely this is, but how many of you have heard of the 80-20 rule at Google? One, couple, okay. So a lot of them haven't. So some people say there's rumor, or I don't know if it's true, that 80-20 rule doesn't officially exist anymore at Google, but the principle is still there. And what the 80-20 rule is that Google allows its employees to spend 80% of their time and energy on their task, the thing they were hired for, and 20% of their time and energy on whatever they want. Whatever they want. Pay time to do whatever you want and use the Google resources to do it. And whatever you want is whatever you want. We talked about there's massage therapy there, there's get your hair cut, get your oil change, doing ping pong or tennis to rejuvenate, or to do actual work, to do passions that you have. Because of the 80-20 rule, we have things like Gmail, we have Google Transit, we have Google Talk, we have Google News, among other projects. All of those came from the 80-20 rule. People who just had ideas used Google resources and did what they thought they could do, and great things came out of it. See, Google, it trusts its employees, but it also empowers its employees. It pushes them forward. Young people are smart. I know it's easy for us to say they're naive, and they don't know the ways of the world, but they're smart. And not me, I'm not smart. Young people are smart. They know how to communicate in this world most effectively. My question is, why aren't we using it? Why do we think we know how to communicate to their age the best? I can't even communicate. I'm pointing to you guys. I'm just pointing over here. I'm pointing at you guys. I'm pointing beyond you guys. They're like, not me, don't look at me. Don't make young people adopt your programs. Don't ask them to be what you want them to be. Right? We have an elementary school. Recently we had a teacher walkouts. Teachers aren't getting paid enough in Oklahoma. There's both sides of the camp. I don't know where you sit on it. I'm not gonna stake my flag on either side, but the reality is that teachers aren't getting paid much, and they made their voice known. They did a walkout, and they didn't go to school for 2 weeks. And during that time, I asked, I don't know how to get involved in this. So I asked the teacher, how do I get involved in this? What does the church do? You know more than I do. We have an elementary school right down the road from us. I called the principal and said, I don't know how the church can get involved. I need you to tell me. What can the church do for you? It's not, hey, we're going to give you what we think you need. It's, what do you need? She said, well, we don't have enough things to get through the end of this year. And it's a long list. It's been collecting for a long time. It's a lot of stuff, and we need it to get to the end of the year. And I said, don't worry about the list. Send it to me. Send it to me. Send it to our congregation. Within 2 weeks, our congregation had donated over $2,000 worth of school supplies.
Wow.
We packaged it up. We took it over. And I mean, the teachers, the staff, they were bawling. And a couple of days ago, we received an envelope. I mean, the size, it was this big, just stocked full of color paper like this. All of the students at the elementary had written us notes, thanking us. And I'm getting emotional, so. So I want to read a couple of them. This will get me better. So the first one says, "You are awesome." Has some nice hearts on it, and it says, "A is the best." A is for Alameda. That's our church name, Alameda. So A is the best, A is for Alameda. V is pretty low on the alphabet, so I don't know where y'all are going to stand. So this one, it was real close to Mother's Day, and I think the kid was confused. The front says Mom. And it gets better. It says, "Dear Mom, I love you because you are sweet. It is in love. Love, Casper." And a dinosaur on it. So I don't know if I should give that to his mom or keep it. And then here's another one. Nice picture on the back. I mean, better than I could do. I'm sorry if you can't see that. You can see him afterwards. But it says, "Dear Church of Christ, you help a lot. Thank you for helping people and teaching them about God and Jesus. You help a lot. Inya, 2nd grade."
Amen.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Isn't Isn't it amazing how God can work? I didn't do anything. I mean, I literally did nothing in this. So this is not glorifying me. I simply called and said, what do you need? And they were open enough to say, here's what it is. I have a church that's loving enough to say, there's a need, we'll come.
That's
And they showed up, and they provided. And all of the glory went to God. You know, I think of when Jesus says, don't worry. He talks about the birds, the grass. Don't worry about these things in life. I get letters like this, and it reminds me of all the worry I do in my life, trying to pull the fruit out of the ground. I'm just told to water it. I'm just told to plant the seed. Ask people, ask young people, empower them. How can we reach your generation? How can we love you? How can you get to Jesus faster? Not how I want you to do it. How can you do it? So Jesus reached people differently. In 9 cases, Jesus initiated the conversation. Think of the Samaritan woman, the crippled beggar. In 25 instances, the other party initiated the conversation. So think of the rich young ruler, the demonic, the bleeding woman. I guess that was kind of both ways, but the synagogue ruler. So Jesus interacted with people differently. That's okay. We interact with people differently. It's not a cookie cutter model. People are different. He did it in different places. We think it all has to happen here? Absolutely not. Right? Jesus didn't have a church building. They said, come to me and I will, well, he did say that, but he didn't say, come to my church building and I will do it. Right? With James and John, it occurred in the workplace. With the Samaritan woman, that was what she was doing, lame man. But it also took places in people's homes. Peter's house with his mother-in-law. Zacchaeus' house, right? Jesus, he connected with people's thoughts and feelings. He understood new ideas. He understood where people were in their life. He went to them. I think Paul, I am all things to all people. It all goes to the glory of God. That's the paint paraphrase. The church is to treasure the weird and the creative. Learn to empower young people. How do we do it? Well, I think millennials, they value, one, mentoring relationships. We talked about the millennials having the world at their fingertips but not knowing how to navigate it. Millennials, they're not dependent on older people for information, but they need older people for information. They don't think they do. They may not want it initially, but they need it. They need you. We, my wife and I, we need you. We need your generation to lead us. I value my mentoring relationship. It's one of the first things I look to in any new scenario I'm in. Who is going to help me? Whose footsteps am I going to walk behind? And young people, they value it. So my question is, think of your life. And everybody that's below your age, who are you walking with? Who are you mentoring? And it doesn't have to be official, right? It's not we're going to go through this mentoring program and this is what it's going to look like. When's the last time you took someone younger out to coffee? Just to chat. Just see where they are in life. Hey, what struggles are you going through? When's the last time you just gave a phone call to someone younger than you? Said, hey, I was thinking about you today. How are you? That's the kind of stuff that's valuable. It goes a long way. So, millennials, they value mentoring relationships. They also value their ideas being empowered by leadership. Millennials want to know that you care. They want to know that their ideas are worth something. They don't want to be labeled as the millennials anymore or the young people anymore. They want to have a say in the conversation. One of the most valuable things, I'm the youngest person on our staff at our church. It's a church of about 600 people. I'm the youngest person on staff. But the leadership values my input. I'm not saying it's always good or that's always right, but they value it. And I've had some power to make changes in our church, changes that they said wouldn't have happened without your input. And none of it matters besides the idea that they cared about what I had to say. Right? I could have done things 100 ways differently. And I look back and think, why did I do that, not this? But the leadership didn't care. They don't point out the things I did wrong. They point to, hey, what's your next best idea?
Right.
Let's push you forward. I want to empower you to do great things. So, if we're talking about developing young people, we have to trust them, we have to invest in them. We also have to empower them. We have to bring them in, give them value, but then we have to push them forward, saying, where do you want to go? Let me push you in that direction. So the final one is we have to create a culture of following and failure. Mainly failure. Now that sounds strange to us. When we think of failure, we think negative. Failure is a bad thing. Nobody wants to fail. I would say failure is a good thing.
It's a teacher. Yes.
I think it's one of the best things that we can do.
Yeah.
So looking at Google, Google values failure. They love failure. I mean, they thrive on failure. In fact, anytime somebody fails at Google, the likelihood of them getting a promotion is pretty high. I'm not kidding. It's true. If anything, they get complimented. So some of the failures of Google. Google Video. Google tried competing with its now service of YouTube by doing upload video. Completely failed. Google Lively, a customizable online world, let up to 20 users occupy a room and chat with one another. Failed. Google Wave. Indeed, Wave was experimental. Even for some of its employees didn't get it. I didn't even get a definition of what it was. It failed so bad. Dodgeball, a social network based on location, where you can text your location to somebody. Obviously, it failed. Google Buzz, another social media. Google Notebook, online app, let people write notes and save text and share it with people. Google Catalog, think of a catalog online. Google Answers, think of Yahoo Answers. You post a question to a community, people answer it. You never heard of any of these things because they failed. And Google has an extensive list of its failures, things that didn't work out. I'm going to say something crazy again, so don't rush the stage. By our standards, Jesus failed. Now, we know the end result, right? We know ultimately he was successful. But if we look at Jesus' strategy and we compare the notes with our strategy, Jesus failed. Jesus didn't do it the right way. From the very beginning, Jesus angered people. Luke 4. Very beginning, he made people angry. If you ever want to convince people, don't make them angry at the beginning. It's usually not the best way. Jesus, he hung out with losers, with outcasts, with people who were insignificant, who would make no seeming change in their life. He hung out with them. That's who he valued. Jesus died a humiliating death. Doesn't seem like victory from the forefront. What we see as failure, though, Jesus saw as a movement to something greater. Jesus was moving to something greater. What we saw as failure of hanging out with losers, he saw, I'm showing you how to love. I'm showing you what a greater love looks like. When we saw someone hanging on a cross, he said, let me show you what sacrifice looks like. Let me show you what this costs.
Yes.
So the church, I think, is paralyzed by fear. Again, I'm not pointing at your church. I think many of us are paralyzed by fear. And it paralyzes the best of leaders. It has the ability to shut down the most groundbreaking ideas. And the problem is there's no algorithm to remedy fear when it hits. And many people, they fall back on their animal instincts. They fight or they flight. If they fail, they'll run into it like a bull, or they'll run away from it like a coward. We don't know how to deal with failure. Even as I stand here, I have the fear of failure. I remember praying this morning, saying, God, don't let me fail. I don't want to fail at this. I want to say the right words in the best ways. I want people's hearts and minds to be changed in such a way that they agree with me, or at least they let me finish my talk and don't walk out. Right? I'm afraid of failure, even when I've had no significant wins in my life, at least not by the world standards. I haven't written any books. I haven't been on a TV show, unless you count Alzheimer's with my wife. A stranger wouldn't recognize me in a coffee shop. I certainly do not have a household name. Not that anybody could pronounce Menzenmeyer if they saw it. And I'm okay with that, I think. I want to say I'm okay with that, but the fear of failure, it's a crushing feeling, isn't it? I mean, it captures your thoughts, threatening not to release them unless you give it your undivided attention. Oftentimes, I'm stuck in my own head trying to find an escape, a temporary relief, but ultimately, my fears find me. find me in my hiding place. They reveal who I really am. The thing about failure, though, is it isn't a necessary evil. In fact, I would say failure isn't evil at all. It's a necessary consequence of doing something new. We should not put so much merit in our fear of failure, because failure is a sign that we're trying something new, something innovative, something different. You see, in my church, we're entering into a phase of big change, even bigger faith. And fear, the fear of failure, is distinctly present. And in the midst of one of our staff meetings, I remember my senior minister turning to us, the team, putting all this together. And he said, I'm not afraid of falling on my face if this doesn't work.
Amen.
I'm afraid of not trying. Our greatest rewards come on the tail of our greatest risks. We should never be afraid of failing. Real fear should hinge on never trying in the first place. If you want something different than you currently have, something has to change. Again, change. Another weighted word, another word that we don't like that much. But like failure, change is not bad. It shows that we're willing to step into temporary discomfort to advance to something greater. Change moves us closer to the future that we are creating. Left to our own devices, most people don't want to fail, and I get it. I don't want to fail either. It's a hard feeling. It hurts. However, the reality of success is that it is a story that must be discovered, often through trial and error. And the key to overcoming the fear of failure is recognizing its face and embracing it. If you're going to fail, I would say just fail early. Fail early, move on from there.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that nobody can plot out all their moves before making them, expecting that they're going to spare themselves failure down the road. It's inevitable. Failure, it's inevitable. So stop allowing stop allowing it to hinder your creativity, your leadership, your momentum forward. Failure, I would say, is good. I fail as a mechanic. I do. I'm a horrible mechanic. And I own a 1987 Jeep Wrangler, which has recently given me a variety of issues. And when I started on the adventure of being a classic Jeep Wrangler owner, I couldn't tell you the difference between a flex head ratchet and a hex bolster screwdriver. I still couldn't, honestly, but regardless, I've learned more about my Jeep in the past couple of months of it not running than I have of the previous 3 years of it running. I learned a new component of a working engine. I bond with my neighbor as we simultaneously bang our heads on the lifted hood. Or I get some needed exercise having to walk to work on days that my wife can't take me there. You see, failure, it comes in many shapes, it comes in many colors, it comes in many forms, but it should never be a force that hinders our movement forward. There's always something new to learn. There's always some way to improve. Don't fear failure. Seek it. Embrace it. Learn from it. When it comes to young people, we're going to fail a lot. We're imperfect people, living in an imperfect world. Failure is inevitable. So don't seek to avoid failure. Don't make it a requirement for people. Hey, you got to have no failures when you get to this church. You got to have a clean record for at least a year, and then we'll let you attend here. Right? Embrace fear. Try something new. Try something different. So, in our time this morning, we talked about attracting people with Disney magic. We also talked about developing people with a Google culture. Developing a culture of trust. Being willing to invest in our young people. To show them that they're valuable. Now, we can invest in them with the greatest story, the greatest news, with Jesus, but what other ways are we investing in them? Are we trusting them? Are we empowering them, which is our second culture? Empowering young people, pushing them forward. What ways would you get to Jesus? How can I get you closer to Jesus? Not going through my program, not going through my way of things, but just showing you the way to Jesus. And then finally, we talked about a culture of failure. Creating a culture of failure, where failure is not a bad thing. Where we can fail openly and honestly. Where we can say, guess what, we're an imperfect church. And we're just trying at this. But we love you. And we're authentic in that. Or we want to reach Jesus. Or we want to reach young people with Jesus. We want to introduce you to this man, Jesus. not being afraid of failure, not allowing it to paralyze us. I've really enjoyed my time. I hope you have. Thank you again for allowing me to be here. So tomorrow, next week, I'll be back next week. Sure, why not? Tomorrow, we'll be talking about transforming young people with Jesus' love. Looking at what ways did Jesus make disciples, because he had a strategy with it. Right? I think Jesus was very strategic. And he knew what he was doing when it came to making people who would follow after him. So we attract young people, we develop them, but it doesn't end, right? All of this is leading us. None of that matters unless we can transform them, transform their life, and I believe we do that with the way that Jesus loved. So tomorrow morning, we'll talk about that. I hope to see you there. I'm excited to meet more of you. Let me say a closing prayer, thanking God for my time with you all. Heavenly Father, we are so grateful. Grateful that we have a Creator who loves us, who formed us, who shaped us in the way that we are. Lord, may we embrace who we are. Lord, may we be willing to live out that greatest commandment, to love. To love more, to love always, to love God, to love others. Lord, I'm grateful for this church, the people who worship here. I'm grateful for their openness and their love that they've shared with Darian, my wife, and I. Lord, I'm grateful for the city, Lord, that constantly the people who live here are reminded of your power, your majesty, and Lord, your beauty. The way that you created this world is a beautiful thing. Lord, may that be a reminder to us constantly. Lord, may you remind us of the power that we have, that you, Jesus, are using our hands and feet today, that you haven't stopped walking this earth, that we are your hands and feet. Lord, may we live out the love of Jesus in everything that we do. Thank you for our time together. Thank you for the sacrifice of your Son. Thank you for the hope that we have. We say this all in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for being here.
Beautiful.